I'll go. Hi, everybody. My name's Bob Dranoff. I am my current position is I'm commissioner of the East Coast Conference. We're a NCAA Division II athletic conference based predominantly in New York. We also have a school in Connecticut and one down in Washington, D.C. Been doing this for about 13 years. And prior to that, I was an athletic director at a few different schools. Very happy to have a chance to do this tonight.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Deana Garner-Smith, and in my current role, I am the senior woman administrator and sport administrator in the Sun Devil Athletics Department at Arizona State University. Prior to joining the Sun Devil Athletics staff, I transitioned from the National Football League, where I worked with Raymond Anderson and in the security department, as well as the player development space. And then prior to that, I worked for an extensive amount of time at the NCAA national headquarters in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm honored to be a part of this conversation.
Outstanding. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Frazier. I'm the Director of Athletics here at Northern Illinois University in the MAC conference. Goodness, I've been here about 8 years now. I had to check myself on that. Been an athletic director going on about 16, 17 years. Before this, I was a deputy athletic director at University of Wisconsin. And then I've been at several institutions back east. Been at Division I, II, and III, and looking forward to the conversation.
So the conversation is, as I understand it, we're going to talk a little bit about giving, and I guess both from a financial perspective and creating a culture of giving on campuses. I know that. So my conference is made up of majority small private institutions who giving is really important. However, I would tell you that creating a culture of giving at most of those schools for student athletes is not the easiest job in the world. As a former AD at both Division II and III schools, I know that was always a battle trying to engage that kind of thinking when it comes to financial giving. So I would, I guess, Sean, that's a big part of what you do anyways, and your levels, trying to work on development ideas.
Oh, no question. I'm sorry. Did you say me, Bob?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. My audio is a little bit jacked up here. I'm sorry. It's great state of Illinois here. Yeah. So it's interesting to say that, because right now we're thrusted into this conversation around how do we stabilize an athletic department from a financial standpoint that's been, quite frankly, has been crippled. We are a tuition-driven institution. Our athletic department is a fair amount. I'd say a little under 30% of our dollars from tuition and fees. So fees primarily. So if the fees, as you can imagine, from an enrollment have hit pretty hard, and you're starting to see a lot throughout our conference and in the country where we've been having to subsidize. So we're actually just coming off of a bit of a campaign component. We have this thing called Huskies Invest. It's a fundraising push for the Week of Giving. We actually turn that into a campaign. So Huskies Invest, a campaign to deal with COVID relief. So it's been a part of the subsidizing the loss. We're looking at a little bit, a little over 2.8 million in lost revenue. And probably will grow just under 5 because of the COVID testing and other types of things that we have to do. So the need is there. So the whole philanthropy part of that, the whole battle cry to help subsidize what's lost has been there. One of the big hits for us has been that we really count on guaranteed football games. So, Deana, she's at the Power Five, so she has all this money that she can be able to write me a check, and Ray's been nice to possibly do that to one or two of their a group of 5 schools like myself, maybe a Mountain West institution. But we lost the bulk of that because our relationships with the Big Ten. And right off the bat, when the Big Ten had made their announcement of only going conference only, that was a significant. That was a little under 1.3 million on a regular year. It's over 2. So think about that right off the bat. Boom, that was gone. So again, trying to figure that out. So we had to really flip on the light of philanthropy, stewardship, and all the things necessary to appeal to our fan base as well as to our alumni that we had to fill the void. So going and trying to be in a place of having our hand out, but also at the same time understanding and telling the story about why, and then the impact of those dollars on our student athletes, our staff, and our institution. So yeah, it's a process that all of us are dealing with in college athletics, but even more so when we had some revenue streams that were completely decimated by COVID-19 and our inability to be in the event business. That's essentially what we are. So I'll shut up there because I can get on the pulpit and talk a lot, but I'll pass that maybe to Deana from your perspective.
Okay. Well, in my role as SWA, I would say that Ray, myself to a certain extent, Gene Boyd, who's our chief of staff, and obviously our CFO, they've been integral as it relates to what the plan and the pathway back from COVID looks like. We have been fortunate that because of some systems that were put into place when the beginning of COVID was, setting in, that we were able to have, I want to say, maybe some savings to the point where we didn't have to let a lot of people go. So we're fortunate that we have not had to do that at the university either. So President Crow has been able to not have to take that position. I would say that, fundraising and giving back is paramount, and all of us are engaged in varying degrees. I would say for myself, varying degrees, because I'm currently not on campus. I have been working remotely because of health related COVID issues, having lost a parent in COVID, and then husband dealing with COVID related stroke illness. So, everybody gives back in some way. And so I would say to you that even though I've been working remotely, I have been able to at least keep a pulse on how things are going from a human capital perspective, knowing that the folks that are in charge of our budget and trying to keep people safe and supported, that's still going on in collaboration with our university development team. So I do know that they've created some interesting ways to keep a pulse and keep in contact with donors, continue to cultivate outreach. And the way that they've been doing it, and I'm sure all of you have been doing the same, is by telling those unique stories, because we don't just stop being involved in sport. We have to, like Sean, like you said, we have to continue telling the story about why we are in the business that we're in, and to really highlight the great men and women and young people that we have that are, talented enough to partner their academic successes with their athletic successes. And so it's really been interesting being remote to see those stories play out and to be able to dial in through our sports and information department so that they can tell those stories, not just with the goal of revenue generation or continuing to seek things out, but also just so people can have some connectivity to our university being a part of the fabric of the community. And so I would share one example of that is our sports nutrition department has really thrived during this period of time because they were able to get in alignment with one of our local grocers, and we were able to kind of tell the story about what's going on within the department and why it's so important for us to continue to allow our young people to train, but they need to be able to have appropriate food stuffs, and how can we grow that relationship. And these folks really stepped up in a big way because they are working in the grocery business and they're serving their community, and they really feel very, very much more strongly connected through this pandemic because we are a collaborator. So I thought that was a really interesting way for us to give back and for them to give and us to be connected.
I think that's you hit on something, Deana, that I think is real true. This, and we were talking before the session began, but this experience with this pandemic is obviously full of lessons, obviously, and a lot of great stories, but a lot of really, as you just mentioned, some really difficult stories too. And I see it in just going back to the fundraising piece. I see it with some of our schools who are really stretched and having to make difficult decisions. I think we've seen it on the national level, even in Division I, with some major universities dropping programs for budget reasons. We've seen it in my conference where we lost a school who they closed down their entire athletic program and made that decision, moving forward. And I think part of it, when I spoke to their president, part of it was the challenges of balancing athletics and the cost of athletics and what's the prospect. There's so many other things going on here that we need to spend our money on. And does athletics, besides the enrollment piece, and they made the decision that it wasn't as important for them as maybe it is at pretty much every other school, but this was the choice that they made. But I do see the connection also, when we talk about having to tell those stories and that connectivity. I agree with you completely. I think that's what schools are having to really strive to do. So whether part of it is trying to make some money, I think a big part of it is how do we keep all our student athletes, keep their parents, keep alumni all connected, so they don't forget us. They know that at some point things are going to get better, right? I hope they're going to get better. That would be a good thing. But I think that's a big part of what we do. I know that we were saying it's that culture of giving with student athletes, but a big part of that is working with those student athletes to try to help them, give them opportunities to give back to their community too.
Yeah. No, it's a good, very good point. I think that we're all going to be taxed here. I put in the chat to everyone a link to our Huskies Invest the campaign. It's a link you could check a little bit about how we have done that. I'll also put in here in a minute, our Husky Athletic Fund. Kind of, one of the things that is interesting about this is that what we try to do is that we knew we were going to be in some significant dire straits back in March when everything kind of stopped, right? But the whole idea there, the biggest challenge is to try to have this engagement virtually. The virtual engagement. A great part of my time is spent on kissing babies and stealing lollipops, and that's just the reality of some levels of engagement. And to do that, you don't do it over the phone or over the video. You do that face to face, and also to be able to tell the story. But it's interesting that we had to pivot. And one of the things I just knew that we were going to be in trouble when we had took this concept called the Victory Bash. The Victory Bash is basically a celebration of what we're doing in Husky Athletics, but we bring people. We sit down and eat. We talk a little bit about the stories of our student athletes, the things that are happening, and it's a good feel good, with our supporters and donors. Well, kind of hard to do that through the virtual medium.
Right.
So that was a real difficult challenge. So one of the things we did is we made this all virtual. And part of the genius of this, and it's genius because I wasn't involved, my team was involved, because I had some, I'm a touchy-feely, huggy type of person. I said, well, how are we going to get people to buy into it? And it was all content-driven. So I'll put in the link here in a minute about the Victory Bash virtual edition. And what it was all the tradition-based things, programs, and brought back some of our NFL people, our Heisman Trophy candidate. We had some people that were really excited about yesteryear, as they should be. They're Huskies. So we put all that programming in, and we made it almost like if you guys remember the old Jerry Lewis telethon type process, right? So every day there was an event that was a Husky law, NIU law, and it actually worked. It actually worked, and it's all on YouTube, so you can go and check it out, and replicate, and like I like to say, sample that would work for you. But it did work, and it was about engagement, and we had so many different hits, and people were so happy. Why don't you do this regularly, Sean? Like, well, that's good to know, So those are types of things that could be creative. So I'll put that in the chat. But it's about telling the story and getting people engaged about the tradition and history at your institution, and then really talking about the need, because people give to things that they're passionate about, and sports is definitely one of them. So I'll stop there and I'll find that link and put it in there and go from there.
That's great.
Hey, Deana, how about at your school in terms of we were the ideas that Sean's giving him in terms of trying to engage with the financial part. How about that with what you're doing on your campus with your programs in terms of service and things like that? Is that something that's left to the coaches and the student athletes, or the student athlete advisory committee, or is there a strategy that you folks put together?
Sure. So we work in concert with campus, with our Sun Devil, the Sun Devil Club, which is our development department. They report up through through the Office of the President, but we have a group of them that are actually physically located in a normal time. They're located in our building in the football stadium where most of our senior staff are, and they work across all of our 26 sports teams. In addition to the director works and is a member of our senior staff, so they come up with all the strategies to pivot and to help support the department across all of the sports, but then also to they've been doing things differently to try and engage, and they've been able to retain connectivity with a lot of the donors that have been existing across multiple sports, not just say football or basketball, but have been engaged across multiple sports as far as giving and just being supportive. And then they work, as a matter of course, very closely with our ticketing and marketing department. And I think that they've come up with some very unique and creative strategies for virtual engagement. So taking a playbook, if you will, from the WNBA and some of the NFL football games, and maybe even the National Hockey League football games, where fans can now take a picture of themselves and purchase like a virtual picture of themselves in a cardboard cutout in the stadium. And I'm not sure what they're going to be doing for basketball season, but I would imagine it may be something similar, or maybe even something different. One of the teams that I work with, as an example, is the band. So we're trying to, our bands are per the Pac-12 directive, they're not going to be traveling to competitions, but we want them to be engaged virtually. And so we're trying to engage them to come up with mini bands instead of a 400-person band that they're accustomed to being a part of. We want them to come together and formulate smaller bands so that they can engage not just with their base, but also with the fans, whoever those fans may be, if we are able to achieve some sort of sport opportunity in January, February, or the spring with other sports like tennis or water polo or beach volleyball. And then I would say that all of us are responsible as sport administrators to work very closely with our coaches to give back, but also to be in concert and connection with our donors. So for example, our women's triathlon team, we sponsor women's triathlon, even though it's an emerging sport, because we have so many Ironman competition in our footprint in Arizona. So they have won the national championship for the past 4 years. And so we were able to have a virtual ring ceremony with them. They're a very small team. It was at the pool, and we were able to have some of the stakeholders who have financially supported our team engage virtually in that ring ceremony, ring celebration. Our team, that same team, and then our golf team have done some things virtually to connect with the community, like participate in a virtual reading program with young people who are at risk and who are, kind of in and out of in a hybrid system as well, being in class for a period of time and or being connected by, the technology in their respective schools, whether they be at risk youth or in mainstream, class environments in the surrounding Phoenix, Tempe area. So I would say that we try to partner internally but then also work across campus and then working in the community to, again, just to reconnect with that connectivity with all of our stakeholders, but then also continue to cultivate new relationships as well.
I think that one of the things that I've seen um, for a long time on campuses, whether they're big or small, is that piece about building the connection to the community.
Mhm.
Anyways, and part of it is fundraising. I think that in our conference and throughout Division Two, and that's one of the basic tenets of Division Two is this idea that community engagement.
Right.
Not just community service, but trying to bring the community to your campus and involve them in everything that's going on. And
Mhm.
one of the things I'm really proud of from our conference is for we've created several partnerships over the years of with different groups that involve some fundraising, but also service opportunities. Make a Wish
Mhm.
is for many years the Division Two cause that, and we've raised a lot of money for them. But we also, and I'm sure at your campuses, you also are. The group Team Impact is very big with our schools. That's the group that works with seriously ill kids and
Mhm.
partners them with teams. They draft a child onto the boy or girl onto the team, and it's not just sports. It's life,
Right.
and I think all those kind of opportunities, I think, are both great ways for us to help the community, and whether it's fundraising or support, but also the lessons learned by these students. And we're very close with the folks at that group Team Impact. We've done a lot of training with them and have
Mhm.
them in to train our leadership training and but those lessons of working with kids that are really struggling but making them part of their own lives, those are lessons that they're not gonna get in the classroom, and maybe not even get on the court or the field. And so we found that this building these partnerships with different groups. So it's not just we're involved. Um, we partner with the group One Love, which does a lot of work in relationship violence. We were talking about that a little bit before, Deana. Um, I find a lot of those really really rewarding, and so I think while we talk to the students about the important, in every school and every team within a school has projects and things that they want to raise money for. We have some that are conference wide that we've done, but as I went through the years of doing this, I realized it really doesn't matter. Well, perhaps it matters where you're putting the money, but we're just happy that students think this is important, and student athletes think it's important, and are going to put their time and effort into making those contributions. And hopefully, we are creating this culture where when they leave the school, they're going to still stay involved in service and those kind of things.
Yeah. No, I think that you're actually correct. I think all those pieces too. I don't want to think just to shift just a tad that we did talk about a little bit. It's just this financial model that we are seeing, that the athletic departments at all of our levels, we're starting to see. Is this thing sustainable?
Sustain.
You know, and I think we're seeing it from a legislative standpoint. We're seeing it from an NCAA legislative standpoint. We're seeing it from a congressional standpoint as we talk about name, image, and likeness. Um, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the individual missions of the different institutions, um, that are presenting these offerings in athletics. And I think that part of the issue is now is that we're starting to see that a number of institutions are being exposed for the expenses and revenues. And we talk about colleges and universities in this session, but the reality is that we definitely have to monitor those revenues and expenses, and to do it in a way that we are being responsible
Right.
for that. And we're starting to see now that many institutions are going the way of, okay, maybe we should reduce. Bobby just talked about that, reduce our offerings, or to even go further, to take a look at how do we sponsor it all. There's a number of institutions that are even just reviewing. The faculty are getting together, a board of trustees and regents are getting together, chancellors and presidents are getting together and taking a look at, okay, this financial enterprise called college athletics. What does this mean to the overall impact and to the outcomes of teaching our young people? So we're on review, right? Definitely Division One. I will say that. When I was at Division Three and Division Two, we had a focus. It was the first thing on many of the chopping block would be taking a look at athletics. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I won't name those institutions, but I'm quite sure you can Google and find out for yourself. But it was interesting to have this conversation. It was the same issue about the sustainability component. What exactly are we putting into it financially? Are we compromising academics to get this done? These are all things that, quite frankly, are being pulled into a blender right now.
Yep.
And especially now when it's an election year, and that's probably taboo to even mention that that's close to the election. But I will say that these are things that continuously are being to the forefront. I know in our conference, taking a look at, a number of institutions who have reduced offerings financially. Deana talked about layoffs. Yes, we have laid off. We are looking at other type of levers of financial reductions. It's on and on and on. The real issue is this performer going to work in the future? Can we weather this? Are we getting a return on the so-called investment of higher ed around college athletics? And I think that as we take a look and we pull that back from the onion rings back, we're going to have to really justify what exactly are we supplying to the holistic higher education shared governance process of the institution. And I'm in that mold. My president, Lisa Freeman, she's taken a look at how we do things. One of the things she's done is she's restructured athletics. So rec sports reports through mine. That was a new organizational structure. I've had it at Division III and Division II when I was AD stops, but now that goes through the ICA side too. So we got recreation, now we got intercollegiate athletics. So taking a look at how we do that to streamline those redundancies that are across campus. So that's constant, but it's really going to be up to us in taking a look at the sport offerings and then taking a look at how it impacts the overall university. So we don't price ourselves out. And that's kind of what's going on in the higher education model right now, which is, quite frankly, under attack from a lot of different sides right now. And we're starting to see that. And that's why, unfortunately, we're seeing reductions in sport offerings. I don't think that's the answer, but that's just my philosophical issue. But that's why we're under attack. So I just kind of lay that out there for you guys.
Yeah.
I'll just jump on that. I agree with you. Having been at all three levels myself, and I think somewhere, and I'm not saying it's the wrong thing, but somewhere things really ratcheted up big time. And as many things happen in our world, is that everyone else just sort of fell in line, and the need to keep up. Speaking of somebody that's in Division II, we also see the trickle down to the expectation then that, well, my first AD's job, I had my entire staff was part-time. I was the only full-time person. Yeah. You remember those days, Sean?
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. And then but now most of the schools in our conference have all full-time coaches, and at some point there is going to have to, I keep telling people it's sort of like a correction in the market at some point. We're going to see change. And in some ways it's going to be good, but in some ways I don't think it's going to be good. I agree with you. I think the idea of having really well-rounded and diverse athletic programs is a benefit to any school.
Yeah. Well, Deana, your point, you probably send folks on a regular to the Olympics. The Olympic movement could be definitely affected.
Absolutely.
We're talking right now based on the funding models that we're seeing across the board. I'm quite sure that there's probably talks of reductions and other types of things that will be an unintended consequence of the reduction of sport offerings at higher ed level. So
well, and it doesn't help with current litigation and whether it be the Alston case.
Yep.
You mentioned NIL, but the Alston case, and how are we going to adjust? How are we going to correct? You have social justice related issues that are also at the forefront when you think about the universities being more Black and brown, at least especially in the athletics department, and you better have people that are on main campus that are connected, because you're going to have all kinds of unsettling situations occur if you're not paying attention and dialing into what that might look like as we continue to evolve as a country, and not even just our country. I mean, it's happening throughout the world. So when you think about, to your point, Sean, about just the revenue, what does this look like for international student athletes who are accustomed to traveling to our universities and colleges to attend classes, and then let alone if they want to compete? There are lots of different um, concerns, interests, and barriers now that we hadn't really been necessarily dealing with prior to the pandemic.
Right.
So I think there's some significant costs. And then when you think about the workforce, Bob, you mentioned that universities and the portfolios of those sports that are offered, and being as diverse as possible is a good thing. But when you think about hiring whether it's the staff, including the coaches, and if they come from another country, is your university going to be able and willing to invest in them? Is your athletics department going to have the revenue to do so? Are they going to get the cooperation from the governing body, in that person's respective country, let alone in your catchment area? Like if you have to go through the embassy. I mean, there's so many things now, that we hadn't really had to contend with, in this way, with the backdrop of currently still being in the pandemic. And for us geographically, it's really fascinating to be, in a community that is surrounded by 22 Native American tribes. Plus, we are geographically closest to the Mexican border, and you have um, these issues continuing to swirl and occur from, folks in Washington coming to, look at the wall, not acknowledge the wall. People are there. People are trying to come and move and free, industry, and businesses are trying to continue operating. And then you have all of this, um, political rhetoric and discord, and it's not helping society. And then you have young people who are trying to get an education who are a part of it.
Mhm.
It's a
and
lot.
and want to have and want and should have a voice in some of those issues
Absolutely.
too, because it goes back to what I was saying before. I think so many of the lessons that we have an opportunity to teach these kids and their kids is comes out of all those learning
Yeah.
opportunities. Speaking what you were just saying, Dean, with international students, a lot of schools for many years were dependent on those students also
Mhm.
for tuition, for increasing student body. Maybe had a philosophical intent to bring in international kids because it expanded their exposure and the institution they were. And you're right. Whether it's politics or finances or the law,
Hmm.
it's going to be more and more difficult. And
More
and
difficult.
and I think it does go back to the need for schools. When we talk about we over the last 6 to 9 months, we've tried to do more and more programming in the areas of social justice and giving opportunities for students and coaches to speak, and so we've been intentional on that. But when we were putting these programs together, we did these little town halls online. I kept on saying, we got a big segment of our population. When we think about diversity, I think we automatically go to African American and Hispanic student athletes, and if and then maybe we're starting to talk about the LGBTQ plus community. But we have a lot of international kids too, and I said that's a big part of some of our diversity concerns too. Is are we
Right.
serving? We're bringing them to come and be athletes, but are we actually supporting them and
Right.
doing the things that they need also? We have a lot of expectations of those students. One of the main ones is to pay, an international tuition, you know. But do we do enough? I think there has to be more
Right.
if those students are permitted to return to the states. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think these are real issues. Maybe we stop here and ask if there's any questions. Does anyone out there who have any questions for us? They can put them in the chat, or they can unmute their line, or we can work this as we're at the 20-minute mark here.
Anyone?
No questions. Going. gone. Okay, so but one point that I'll bring up that I think is also important. We had talked about this model of the financial model on athletics in higher ed. One of the things that we're going to continuously have to do a good job in athletics is to get out of the negative media eye. And we've been taking some serious arrows relative to student athlete welfare or well-being, excuse me. You know, these issues like the Alston case, like Deana, what you said, and in that name, image, and likeness, and just overall, you know, some of the things going on relative to what's happening with NCAA violations or you know federal. You know, I don't want to single any of that out, but that is a lightning rod when we start talking about how can athletics play a major role enhancing the college life of a student and a student athlete. There's so many great things that one receives as a student athlete, but that is being completely minimized and marginalized by virtue of the negative things that are on the front line. You know, that whole front porch of the institution situation. So what we're going to have to do is make sure we invest in ourselves to make sure that we go the extra mile, that this is a holistic, this is a good thing. And yes, okay, some of the things that have been out there have been not good, to be perfectly honest with you. And you know, we over the years taking a look at sexual assault and diversity and some of the hot topic issues that we deal with in American society. But athletics seems to have really kind of gone down a road where we've had to deal with the image, the negative image of that, and then that you compound that on the finances and everything else. So it's an overloading of issues, and I think that that's something that keeps me up at night. People ask me, "What keeps you up at night?" Oh, okay, a number of things. The top thing that it tells me is I get a phone call because I'm dealing with some type of crisis or issue relative to a negative blight on the university.
Right.
So that part is really tough. And as I talk to my senior staff and I talk to younger individuals who want to sit in my chair, God bless them, I talk about those quality controls because they're real for me,
Right.
and it's a daily process.
Right.
So I think that that's also something as we take a look at a president or a chancellor, and Bob, you probably deal with them much more than I do. I just deal with one. God bless her. I love her to death. But at the end of the day, managing that's what really is a big issue for a lot of that senior level leadership that try to control the narrative as we balance this thing out. So I kind of just put that grenade down and see if it blows up on people. You know. The process.
You know, Sean, you said that it keeps you up at night, and it has to, it has to keep both you and Deana up at night with dealing with massive institutions that with so much that could go wrong. But I guess the perhaps maybe one of the frustrating parts is you both could do everything the right way and understand and project and really work hard to plan and educate and all those things and some bad decisions, whether it's from a student athlete or a coach or another administrator, and like you said, now you're sitting there and saying, what do I do next? And that's difficult. I mean, that education piece
Mm-hmm.
is so hard. But a lot of times, the people you got to do a better job educating are the coaches, right? Maybe it's not the student athletes.
Yeah, it's hard. And then when you have the backdrop of COVID,
Mm.
that people are reacting in uncharacteristic manners that we've never seen before. And so just if you can tell people that you have your job, but they still may continue to have in the forefront of their mind and the back of their mind, I don't have my job. And then they continue to do things under stress. And it's hard to just say, well, just be in the moment, because that's not, what does that even mean? Because things continue to change every hour of the day, every day, as it relates to COVID. I mean, racial injustice. I mean, there's just a lot that we are contending with. And because we are front and center, and a lot of these societal related issues affect us, people are either looking to us, whether we want them to or not, to lead and or to explain. And so I think when you have all of that going on at the same time, there are financial costs because you're doing cleanup, and then there's costs with your capital, with working within the administration on your campus or in your particular city. Maybe it's city leadership that you have to then engage with because you're trying to put out fires. And it's a lot. It's really, it's hard to keep people.
There's no playbook for it either, right? There,
No
you know,
playbook.
I mean, we're all doing the best we can, trying to make good decisions with as much information as we can.
Absolutely, but I do think there are so many bright lights and beacons of hope because of the great things that people are doing. They are showing empathy, they are showing care and concern for their fellow human, and I think cultivating and continuing to shine the light on how athletics is a normalizer in crises is the reason that that's my why. But it's like it's hard to get to that and just stay in that space when you have everything that we've talked about thus far on this call to deal with. But I mean, it's fascinating just to see. I hope that you were able to take advantage of watching some of the professional sporting events. I mean, in particular, I am so inspired by the WNBA and all of the things that those wonderful, very committed women were able to do, and the commissioners of both the NBA and the WNBA and what they were able to do safely for their workforce, and the National Hockey League and all these others. So we know that there are things that we can do, which is part of why we probably are in this business, to educate through sport and to allow for a beacon of light to shine on what this looks like so that we can sustain it. But the sustainability of it is what's so uncertain right now.
Mm-hmm. You were saying something, Bob. You were in the heat of the moment there. I saw you. You were ready to get it.
Yeah, no. Well, one thing I did want to say is I had I was real pleased that I was able to listen in on Rich Lapchick's address earlier today, and I've known him because my St. John's background. I knew Rich for many years, and I every time I get it, I haven't talked to him in many years, but every time I have an opportunity to listen to him, and the one thing that it sparked something in me when what Deana was just saying is that it is frustrating and it's hard and there's a lot of difficult decisions. But I agree with you. I think that people look to, whether it's college or professional or whatever level, I think people do look to those involved in sports to try to help make some of those, come up with some of those answers.
Yeah.
And it has the ability, as Rich said, has the ability to make change.
Right.
And I think those are two, as you said, the NBA and the WNBA are two great examples of how you work hard enough and you're creative and people buy in and you got good leaders,
Right.
and things can happen, and better things can happen. And,
Right.
I'm hopeful that is going to be the result with all this. I think we got a long road to go to make things better right now with COVID, but
yeah,
crossing my fingers. But
well, you're absolutely right. We do have a long. I've glossed over the social justice piece of it, and I tell you right now, that's nothing to gloss over because what we're dealing with. It's taken a little bit of a turn to the left and to the right, and I'm quite sure that we're going to see a lot more. On our campus, we've had a number of different marches and different things going on, the BLM movement, as well as just a human rights issue. I've been engaged in that activity a lot throughout my career, but this is probably the most. And part of it is so numbing is that COVID-19 has taken it to the next level because I'm dealing with the social justice, social action component, but then COVID-19 gives you another wrinkle to the whole process because people are already stressed out and debilitated by that aspect on top of what's going on with the social action piece of it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to take a look at, and to manage that as an administrator, a college president, board of regents, trustee, what have you, and especially in our roles, is even more because the reality now is that the burnout rate now in these roles are significant. This is probably not a moment that I'm not thinking, oh my God, I just like, can I just get 20 minutes here? But no, because it's constant, and you're right. People are managing the expectations all the time. So yeah, that's another cog to the university college life that has to be addressed, and it can't be something that you put on hold because those issues are front line
Right.
24/7. And if you don't manage those, just like sexual assault, Title IX, and some of those other hard hitting issues, that as a college administrator, you will find yourself without a job. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? Those are one of those now issues.
Right.
My desk is full of competing priorities. Well, that's a priority that I have to address immediately. We had
Right.
a very comprehensive diversity and inclusion plan, won awards, something that I've been a part of my entire career. But I had to pivot immediately on the social justice piece of it because we really didn't have answers. And I had my student athletes come to me and say, hey, Mr. Frazier, I love you, but this is important. George Floyd, my aunt, my this, my that, this is something impactful for me.
Right.
And we want to express ourselves. Now, on the flip, we talk about philanthropy. I've got people calling me up saying, what are you doing? That's no place. Just shut up and play. We just want you to play. This has no place in the annals of higher ed. You should just know. And I have to pivot and say, oh no, I support my students. This is
Right.
a laboratory for free speech. This is what we do in higher ed.
Right.
So you could see the push and pull that goes along with this advocacy that we must show our students and have their voice. So it's a definite try to manage this as an administrator. Oof, I had a full head of hair. It's like out to here. And look what happened. Boom. There it is.
Right. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a really great point. That's a I didn't put the you brought it full circle here because that development piece, and I saw it even on our level. Sean, you're a Long Island guy,
Yep.
and Long Island hasn't changed a lot from when you were here. I tell you, when I look out and I see on the news the parades and the marches and I see it at our schools who are trying to do the right thing and educating their students, participating in the town hall events that we're doing and promoting those and discussing on their own campuses racial justice, and then having parents call and
well call up and say, hey, that really has no place. Almost because I think it's a little bit more pronounced because this is an election year. Let's just call it what it is, And I think that ultimately, no matter what side that you pick, or if you even have a side, or you're even vested into politics in this day and age, depends on the conversation. But I think that the essence of freedom of expression on a college campus is extremely, it's got a historic nature to it.
Right.
It's always been there, regardless of what's going on now, right? So for us, there's only one answer for us. It's to support the student athlete voice, regardless if it's pro or against or for. It doesn't really matter as long as they do it in a peaceful way,
right?
And to express themselves. We have to do that. That's part of rite of passage to higher education. Now, not to defame, to do anything that it's my brother's a police officer. So think about an African American police officer right outside of Boston. What he's had to deal with. What I talked to him about. I come from a long line of police officers. My father was a police officer. I'm the only knucklehead that didn't go into the profession, according to my uncle. But the point is that think about that dynamic going on right now. Police officers, folks of color, black and brown, and how that has framed our positions at so many different places across the country. So I have a different lens, as you can imagine, as a black male dealing with law enforcement and understanding that, and now talking to my student athletes who want change, especially as folks, a lot of commentary about defund the police and all these other things going on. So you can imagine how stressful a time that some of these issues are. So it's an interesting time to be an administrator right now, no question about it.
I just think it's so awesome because things have been so front and center, because we're at home. It's forced people to acknowledge, even if you don't want to acknowledge. You can't. You got to just flip the channel, and it's on all the channels. So it's there, and the balance though is really important, because then you get into the fatigue, and the fatigue brings about negativity. It can, but we have such a great opportunity to educate and to learn, in a manner that we've never really been afforded the opportunity to do so because of COVID, because there are so many of us that are working remotely and are home. So really cultivating the ally relationships has been beautiful. And I think that that is what, I kept hearing thematically from so many, leaders in our respective communities. And I think that's hopefully something that will continue to, gain momentum, so that we can continue to learn from each other, and to really, focus on what really matters, and humans matter, and how can we work in concert with each other so that we can respectfully have dialogue, even if we have disagreeing, political affiliations. It doesn't matter. You're a human. Let's just not be a jerk, and let's figure out how can we coexist so that we can both be prosperous and supportive of each other. And sports is the backdrop. We can still, but cheer on your team. Let's go.
Hey, Deana, I'm going to vote for you.
Okay.
All right? I'm voting for you. You got it. You got it.
Got it. I tell you right now, you're giving me hope.
I'm trying. I'm trying to be positive. I share with you some of my backdrop. I'm like, okay,
No.
I don't even know, and it's just, but it has been beautiful talking with allies, just about, like, that never have checked in. Are you okay? Like that's what you should be doing, but that's not always what you do. And so that's been a beautiful, experience, and just trying to be mindful of that, is a really wonderful thing. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That is.
It is. It is. I have to sign off because I have to go teach a class now.
Well, it was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. I think we're a good team.
Yes, we have to do this again.
Well, Sean has like 4 or 5 more of these, so good luck with those.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting you.
He filled every slot. My assistant gave him, and he filled it. God bless Roy.
That's awesome.
Well, you're a good man to do it. I hope to talk to you folks again, and
Yes.
Sean, if you take a stop home at some point, back to the neighborhood, make sure you.
No question. Well, I gotta get back. My mother's is in Jersey, so I'm gonna get back there. And I got all my friends
Sure.
still there. So you know what? I will be making a stop, and I'll look.
All right. Well, please. That would be great.
That'd be great. Fantastic.
And Deana, good luck with everything going on with you. I hope
you.
things get a little easier for you.
Thank you very much. It was a
It
pleasure.
was great seeing you folks. Take
Take
care.
care.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Take care.
Well, Sean, I guess we could see if there's a couple folks still on. Does anyone have any comments or questions? We have
About
4
3 minutes. Yeah.
3 minutes.
Any questions?
I don't think so. No.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I think it's interesting from your perspective as we kind of clean up. What are there anything that's a hot button? You got a good senior team there. Obviously, I know Raid. I know Boyd. You got some really good. All of your people. Goodness sake, I know them very well.
Yeah, you did.
They're all really great people. Are there anything that you are working on right now that you could share with the group?
Sure. Well, our president, in response to our students, our African American students, saying, many of them on campus were saying that they did not feel supported by the university. So the president listened, President Crow listened, and he initiated and launched a 25-point plan. There's 25 initiatives that are really going to turn into 28 initiatives around diversity and inclusiveness, to be supportive of our faculty, staff, and our students, mainly brown and Black young women and men. And so we are working across campus collaboratively to move forward on those initiatives, and to frame what strategic plans around each of those initiatives as part of an overall strategic plan on how the university will move forward to make sure that diversity and inclusiveness is definitely demonstrated and at the forefront of how we operate. So that's been a joy to be able to participate in those discussions with faculty, staff, and students who many of them who I don't know other than through this experience. So that's a huge initiative that we're working through now. Um, and I would just say, just continuing to look forward to November the 7th when the Pac-12 is going to kick off football.
Right.
So we'll see what that looks like. And then we're just continuing to support our other sport teams, with men's and women's basketball starting off in November. And then we'll see what, January looks like and what those spring sports are going to be able to do. So I would say those are the biggest things.
Yeah, well, that's big, and we're actually kicking off November 4th.
Okay. Oh, soon.
Yeah, so we're kicking off right after Election Day.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking, I did forget to mention that, and I did not mean to on purpose. I would tell you that our conference, and I'm sure your school as well, and your athletics department, our student athletes have galvanized to get out the vote like never before, and it's been a blessing to work with them and to work with student leadership on campus to inspire, sometimes the malaise of students on campus from voting. But throughout, they have really partnered with. We have two young ladies on our women's softball team that have really been at the forefront of getting all of our 26 sport teams 100% student athlete engagement around voter registration.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we've done the same thing. We're about 88% as an athletic department, like forced to the polls thing that we've got. So yeah, it's a big one. It's going to be a big one.
It's important. People need to be able to express themselves and get engaged civically.
No question. Deana, it's been an outstanding time to connect with you. Anything I can do for you, please let me know. Please tell the team back there hello. I'm very envious of your weather that you guys have out there. Trust me, because it snowed here.
It did? Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Not feeling that. No.
Yeah. No. But anything I can do for you,
and
if you see Durango, if you see her and all, I mean, she speaks so highly of you. So
okay,
I appreciate you doing that for sure.
Absolutely, she's wonderful.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks to our participants. Thanks for joining our session.
Good. I'm going to sign off, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, you take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.